Hello everybody and welcome back to another round of Modern Melee. In the booth as usual, Marco and Ginkgo.
Hello everyone!
After a longer pause we are back bringing you one of the interesting matchups in our meta. This is Jund on your right versus Hammertime on your left.
It's almost a classic matchup. I don't know if it's a classic matchup on MTGO or in other LGSs, but definitely it's a classic matchup in our own LGS.
Yes, so this is a classic tale of will the Jund them out, or will they be beaten before they can do anything on turn 2?
Yeah, certainly. It's always will a hammer player asks myself, I will play this creature. Will it survive?
Yes. Do you have it? Now? What about now? Yes. So there is a Sigarda's Aid on the battlefield for the hammer player, and this is an Esper Sentinel. On the other side, a fearsome Ragavan, a card that is on the chopping block of being banned or not being banned in Modern. But let's see who wins this battle of epic creatures 1-drops.
And that's the most effective
Planeswalker ever. Yes.
removal for Esper Sentinels.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, but it's definitely one of the best Planeswalkers as well.
So Wrenn and Six comes down, tries to ping the Esper Sentinel. The Esper Sentinel draws the Hammer player a card, and lo and behold, the Sigarda's Aid puts a hammer on the Esper Sentinel. It has 1 damage marked on it, but it is an 11/11 and ready to rumble in the red zone. Now, what do you need to win from here on out? You already have your own personal diabase because the opponent needs to jump block every turn in order to stay alive. What does the hammer player need to win?
Well, the most obvious answer is another hammer and trample. But other than that, you need to keep some kind of pressure. And there it is. There is the trample.
There is the trample and lifelink in form of the Shadow Spear. Unfortunately, Ragavan bites the dust. That's not how the song goes, but nevertheless, the opponent takes a lot of damage. To be precise, 11 of those damage.
Interesting thing that the player leaves the Wrenn on the board. This is a debatable choice, definitely, especially if you had trample, because the Wrenn really gives Jund the edge that he needs. But there it is, another hammer. So I guess that's some kind of protection against removals. You have a second creature on the board, and you can creep hammer on it next turn. So it's not enough to just remove one of these creatures for Jund.
Yeah, but I can definitely see a world, as you have said, something like, let's say, another creature in form of Ragavan or whatever to get on the battlefield, and then Boseiju to get rid of the Shadow Spear or something, block, survive, get back with the Wrenn, and rinse and repeat the whole shebang. Now, this is a tall order, and besides, I do believe 1 or 2 copies of Boseiju and maybe 1 Kolaghan's Command. Is there anything that can get rid of artifacts in game 1 from the Jund side?
That's it. There are some players in our LGS that still play 1 to 2 Assassin's Trophies in the main board.
Yes.
Yeah, there are some very, very old school Jund players in our LGS
this is a Kolaghan's Command.
This is a Kolaghan's Command.
Oh, yeah, so
Removing both creatures,
drawing a card because you cannot pay 12 more for the Esper Sentinel tax, but nevertheless, this is a stable board from all of a sudden from the Jund side.
Indeed, there is a hammer in the hammer player's hand, though there are no bodies on the battlefield. And there
Speaking
are two
of bodies, now there are 2. And whichever one of those bodies tries to get removed with something like Unholy Heat, or the Lightning Bolt will get hammered up.
Exactly.
And we see another one gets the Shadow Spear, just an impromptu equip, because why not when you can? And definitely it's worth it to prevent something from undelirious unholy heat to be able to kill the Ornithopter.
What's more, these two ornithopters have flying, so I see that there are some bodies in the Jund player's hand, namely there is Tarmogoyf, if I'm not mistaken, but it won't help against these ornithopters.
Yeah, but I do believe I spied Liliana of the Veil. Now, that's one problem down. The opponent is at 9. Oh, this is really interesting choice. I would have preferred to just put on a Liliana down, but maybe he thinks he just needs just another suite of removal spells, because the things in his hand do not do the job, cannot get the job done.
Well, Liliana doesn't save him right now.
I know, but something like Liliana into a lightning bolt does. Or Liliana into whichever removal spell does, because...
Not necessarily. If you play Lightning Bolt, I can play my Hammer in response, and then...
Yeah, of course, there's a game of chicken going on. Whoever blinks first then loses, but now if... maybe something like a Fatal Push can still get the job done, but here is probably another hammer from the hammer player.
Yes.
And those are all 4 hammers now in the game, or 3 of them, which is more than enough to finish the game, because you can just go and equip both hammers at both ornithopters once no blockers are declared.
Exactly.
They do lose flying, but they have flying before damage. So you cannot block them, and everything is fine and dandy if you are the Hammertime player.
Yeah, exactly. So they have flying. There are no blockers declared because they can't block. There is one attempt at Fatal Push, but there is a hammer down on the other ornithopter, and that's the GG for game 1.
So I have a commentary on the last 1 or 2 turns that have been going on from the Jund side. So we have seen a Liliana in hand and also a Fatal Push, but the problem was they had 4 mana, but only 2 of those were black pips. I do believe this was the case of, do I go for Liliana or do I go for the Seasoned Pyromancer and dig for something else? Because if some decisions were made to be able to fetch differently, then it might have been a totally different game. But we will never know, because the game 1 goes to the Hammertime player.
Indeed, there are definitely a lot of decision makings for both players in this matchup, but there might have been a line for the Jund player to fetch the turn black land and clear the board once again. The only question that I have is maybe that Fatal Push came from the Seasoned Pyromancer discard draw.
That might also be the case, yes. Might also be the case.
So if that's the case, then there was no better line, but perhaps. Either way, interesting game 1 went to Hammertime player. Sideboarding is interesting.
Crucial.
In this matchup as well. Basically, the Jund player adds more removal, and the Hammer player adds more protection.
Yeah. So as much as the game 1 has been lopsided and very much in the favor of the Hammertime player, this was a very close game, regardless of the outcome being turn 3 or 4 kill without any board presence for the Jund player, because at any point we need to see this as aggro versus control, and the aggressor it definitely is the Hammertime player, and the control definitely is the Jund player, regardless of the fact that they both can be either they can have a long game and be more on the mid-range plan, but in this part, Jund is definitely the more controlling one of the both. And once he establishes dominance, there is no turning back, because Liliana discards every card or kills every creature. Fatal Push and Wrenn and Six keep your board clean, and something like Seasoned Pyromancer just keeps your hand filled with cards. Now, in the sideboard, there is definitely some artifact removal coming from the Jund player. And what do you think the Hammertime player brings in as sort of protection? Which spells do they prefer nowadays?
Of course, the Blacksmith skill. Definitely, Blacksmith skill, if some are being played in the sideboard, are going into the main board. The regular it's two main, two sideboard lately. So 2 Blacksmith skill main board, 2 Blacksmith skill in sideboard, and in these kinds of matchups you side in
Spell Pierces. Flusterstorms. What is the blue splash?
Of course, the Spell Pierce. There are various blue cards that you can play. What Spell Pierces are fine in this kind of matchups. So these 4 cards are some of my ideas, what I would sideboard in. Of course, there are other options, perhaps more bodies. Maybe some players might side in Burenton Forge Tenders if they have some in their sideboards. It's not a particularly effective card against Jund, but it's a great Ragavan blocker, and it provides protection, which is something you want to do. It renders the red removal spells of Jund useless.
And we see again the second game, Ragavan turn 1 as usual. On the other hand, beautiful Arid Mess fetching up probably just a plains or something else. And we see some, just a plains. Also beautiful plains. But we have seen some Blacksmith skills while the Hammer player was shuffling, so they definitely went in. And we will see actually what the turn 1 will be. Because, as you said, first of all, this is a really bad matchup for Ragavan, specifically, because it gets blocked via Esper Sentinel, via everything else. But not only that, if it gets through, it will get through maybe once.
Yes.
And besides Esper Sentinel, none of the cards from the Hammer player benefit so much, so the Jund player. So in other matchups, there might be some overlap between either colors or ideas. So a Ragavan hit can be devastating. Or in terms of control, let's say, if the Ragavan hits something like Lil Teferi or something else, the game is over. But we see almost the exact turn 1 and 2 in game 2 as we have been seeing in game 1, and this is Springleaf Drum exiled with the Ragavan. Now, it will be in exile, but Wrenn and Six has done its duty. And this is a game breaker. Sanctifier and Vec, probably a sideboard card as well.
Yes, exactly. I didn't mention the Sanctifier and Vec in the sideboard plan, because lately some Hammertime decks decided to drop the card from the sideboard. But in our LGS, this is a very powerful sideboard card.
I mean, it is maybe on a grand scale a little bit overplayed, but I do believe it still holds its power in something like especially a Hammertime deck. Now, there is a Tarmogoyf, which is an effective blocker and attacker against Sanctified and Vec, but this is one of the handful of cards that this is good against. Because not only does it provide excellent protection from anything that is red or black, but it also removes several key creatures from the graveyard, not only creatures but cards from the graveyard for further use. And that is one of things that comes to mind is Delirium on something like Unholy Heat, but also Kroxa that cannot escape anymore, and Seasoned Pyromancer who cannot make tokens after it dies.
Exactly.
So definitely an excellent inclusion, followed by the Stoneforge Mystic. And now I'm extremely interested in what the Stoneforge Mystic will fetch. Because there is no... If it fetches a hammer, what does it say?
If it fetches a hammer, it says,
there is a way to equip it for free.
No, not necessarily. Actually, if it fetches a hammer, it says I'm going the default route.
Oh, okay.
Because I have no better options. If it fetched something like Sword of Fire and Ice, Caldra Complete, or perhaps even a reality chip, it would say some other things. For instance, if it fetched the Caldra Complete, it would say I have protection for my Stoneforge Mystic.
Interesting.
Something like that. But the hammer is always the go-to default route you want to take when you don't have better options.
So we see another Springleaf Drum played this time, not in exile, and the hammer just put onto the battlefield like it's 1992, like intended.
This can be very indicative of perhaps having a paladin in your
You're
hand.
still paladin as well. Yes, that is what I was referring to. So there are two ways to equip the hammer for free. One is Pure Steel Paladin with Metalcraft. The other one is Sigarda Sade on the cast trigger. But let's see what the Jund player does and how they will dig up from this. And this is the Seasoned Pyromancer discarding 2 cards. Now, this is one of the cards that we have said becomes a little less potent with the Sanctifier and the Vec on the battlefield. Luckily, or unluckily, depending how you think of it, the Jund player discarded 2 lands. So, first of all, no tokens, but also probably some better cards in their hand.
Exactly, and they have Wrenn and Six that will probably, as saying, return one of those lands.
Yeah, interesting. So, if you are the Jund player here, do you attack with your Tarmogoyf?
That's a good question. I wouldn't. I would never, especially with the hammer on the board. Tarmogoyf is your only blocker for the Sanctifier and Vec that if Paladin enters and Sanctifier gets equipped, he will just hit you.
Yes, but so you, as a Jund player, you would value your Wrenn and Six more than your blocker if something like Sanctifier attacks, you block every time, right? Regardless of they have Pure Steel Paladin or Sigarda Sade and they can flash it in, and you probably know your Tarmogoyf dies if the Sanctifier and Vec attacks.
Perhaps, yeah. But still, you want to buy yourself another turn. You know that your Tarmogoyf will die if.
And we see something extremely interesting. So there is a Caldra Complete fetched, and with the second Stoneforge Mystic just put in, and now all of your defenses are basically useless. But there is an interesting card on the other side of the battlefield, and this is Engineered Explosives. Now EE for 2 on this board is not very good because it will kill also your Wrenn and Six and your Tarmogoyf, but it will get rid of Sanctifier and Vec, both Stoneforge Mystics, and it will render the board useless. Now, useless being before the Caldra Complete hits the battlefield. Now, what is the Jund's answer to something like Caldra Complete?
There is no good answer to Caldra Complete for Jund player. It's usually GG if Caldra Complete enters the battlefield. Most of, or rather all of Jund's removals are destroy. And the Caldra doesn't care for that.
Yeah, so, and we see in this game a very sharp observation about hitting the Wrenn and Six, getting this thing out of the battlefield, because it can do some work either by recurring something like a Boseiju or just getting the hand full for the Jund player, and the Jund player deep in the tank at this point. The board dwindling, Caldra Complete looming, the life total still at a passable life for both of them, but this just means the Caldra Complete was here just for one turn cycle.
Exactly. At this point, as a Jund player, I would attack with my Tarmogoyf.
You have to go to the offensive
Exactly.
and probably lose either a Ragavan or the Seasoned Pyromancer or something, but you need to connect.
You need to connect, exactly.
Now, this leaves you open, but you are under pressure, and as you have said, there is no good answer to something like Caldra Complete. And this is, I would have attacked before.
I would have attacked as well before.
I do believe this was 3 or 4 damage missed, but interesting. Yeah, if you do it like this, you get a Ragavan trigger and also a little bit more damage. So maybe this was intentional.
Maybe this was a
smart choice. Yes,
a smarter.
And we are the ones who are wrong about this.
Yeah.
But still, the threat of Caldra Complete looming, and this is a problem. So much so.
Well, there is a
way
for Caldra Complete.
There is a way.
Liliana was.
Whenever we think that the Jund players out of the game, they just claw back in.
They clawed back in quite impressively this turn.
Oh, but this is Sigarda Sade, and we know what is in the opponent's hand, and this is.
Well, we don't actually. The hammer that
he had a hammer on the battlefield.
Exactly.
Right. So this might be game or it might be just a poke for one. We will never know.
Yeah, we will never know. We will know soon.
We will know very soon. Yeah. Oh, this is
Okay.
Unfortunately, as much as the Jund player clawed back in. Yeah, now the realization.
Okay.
And
That's
11
game.
infect damage, and that is the game and the match. As we have seen, extremely polarizing games, but extremely close ones.
Yeah, definitely.
At any point in game, as we have seen 3 or 4 times, the Jund player just clawed its way back, and this is the resiliency of Jund, and why this Jund is an evergreen deck, and probably now even stronger than ever.
Perhaps there are many different iterations of Jund. The old school Jund, the Saga Jund, the good stuff Jund. I don't know. I don't even know. But it's a strong, resilient deck. In creature-centered meta, it will always have some kind of results.
Yeah. But this is all for now. Thank you all for watching, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye.